At the spring banquet, my concubine sister smashed the Queen Mother's fish basket Guanyin statue. With tears in her eyes, she knelt down. "Please spare my eldest sister's life, Your Majesty." Her shoe soles were too soft, so she slipped. It wasn't intentional. This Buddha statue was a tribute, extremely precious. Enraged, the Queen Mother ordered me to be strangled on the spot. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn on the day of the spring banquet. My concubine sister was holding my hand with a smile. "Sister, let's go worship the fish basket Guanyin in Sinning Palace together. It's so efficacious, Tilda." "Let's go, of course we'll go," I replied, curving my eyes and mimicking the deceptive tone she used on me in my previous life. "It's the perfect chance to pray for good marriages for both of us." She tugged at my sleeve, smiling innocently. "Sister, let's hurry, otherwise, there will be too many people later. And the Buddha will put our wishes at the bottom of the list. The wish I want to make is for the Buddha to grant sister the best man in the world, Tilda." I sneered inwardly, still pretending. That fish basket Guanyin statue was already shattered into pieces. The only reason my concubine sister Liu Rumei was urging me to go was to make me take the blame. Soon, we arrived at the back hall of Sinning Palace. My sister stopped outside the moon gate and pulled her hand out of mine. Her fingertips were slightly cold, but she didn't withdraw them immediately. Instead, she patted the back of my hand gently, her eyebrows curving like a crescent moon. "Sister, go in first. I heard that the first person to burn incense and make a wish will have their prayer heard most clearly by the Buddha. I'll stay here and smell the flowers." She tilted her face to sniff the crabapple blossoms outside the corridor, looking innocent. "After sister finishes making your wish, I'll go in. That way, the Buddha will prioritize arranging sister's good marriage first." She smiled sweetly. In my previous life, when I was strangled on the spot, she had exposed me in the name of upholding justice, entered the palace as a noble lady, and wore the same sweet smile on her face. I stared at her steadily, then smiled softly. "Then you must wait for me." As expected, the Buddha hall was in utter chaos. #2. The incense burner on the offering table had toppled over. The fish basket Guanyin was completely shattered, with pieces of blue and white porcelain scattered all over the floor. I knelt down and picked up the hand of the Guanyin holding the fish basket. There was still a porcelain lotus flower between its fingers, the break fresh and clean. I moved aside a few larger shards to reveal a hollow at the bottom of the statue. On the inner glaze, shiny silver droplets were slowly squirming, drawing closer. I could smell an extremely faint fishy odor. Everything was exactly as it had been in my previous life. Crash! The door was slammed open. My concubine sister's clear scream rang out, just as it had before, filled with shock and fear. "Oh my God, sister! How could you break the Guanyin statue?" Footsteps surged in like a tide, the clinking of jewelry, the rustling of silk skirts, and gasps of horror filled every corner of the Buddha hall in an instant. The first to rush in were several young noble ladies. Miss Xue, the daughter of the Minister of War, covered her mouth with a handkerchief, her eyes wide with shock. My goodness! How could it be broken? Next came several elderly noble ladies. Their eyes darted back and forth between me and the shattered porcelain. Their expressions varied. How dare this girl be so reckless? It's her, the eldest daughter of the Earl of Pingning. I heard she's always been disrespectful, even making her grandmother ill. I've heard that too. Her concubine sister is much more filial. Was it intentional or an accident? Finally, the Queen Mother and the Emperor arrived. The Queen Mother was wearing a crimson phoenix and peony palace dress, normally a joyous color, but now her face was ashen with anger. This fish basket Guanyin is a natural Buddha statue, radiating Buddhist light without needing to be carved. It's an immense auspicious omen. Her voice trembled, whether from anger or grief. I've worshipped it diligently every day, cared for it carefully. prayed day and night for the peace and prosperity of the country, never daring to let a single hair touch it. And you reckless girl, how dare you, your majesty, calm your anger. My concubine sister suddenly threw herself to her knees, tears welling up instantly. Please spare my eldest sister's life. Her shoe soles were too soft, so she slipped. It wasn't intentional, a lady whispered. They're T-shaped soft-soled shoes. Shoes like that are indeed easy to slip in. Everyone was led astray by my sister. They all believed I had broken the statue. I smiled softly and spoke up. This subject's daughter is guilty. I pushed aside the palace maids, knelt down solemnly, and pressed my forehead to the cold golden brick floor. I intentionally smashed the fish basket Guanyin statue. Please punish me, Your Majesty. The Buddha hall fell into dead silence. Everyone was too shocked to speak. My sister lowered her head, the corners of her mouth curving upward. She was utterly triumphant. The Queen Mother's chest heaved violently. Her fingernails, painted with red nail polish, pointed straight at me. Someone, bring her to execution. #3. But I had no choice but to smash it. When I looked up, I met the Emperor's gaze directly. The young monarch's face showed no sign of joy or anger. He only raised his hand slightly to stop the guards approaching. Your subject's daughter dares to beg Your Majesty to summon the imperial physician first. I took out a plain handkerchief and carefully picked up the piece of porcelain base stained with mercury. This Guanyin statue is filled with mercury. If it's worshipped in a sealed Buddha hall for a long time, the mercury vapor will accumulate over days and months. It may harm Your Majesty's health. I would rather lose my own life than see Your Majesty fall ill. I beg Your Majesty and the Emperor to see the truth. My words were firm and sincere. The imperial physician arrived quickly. He took the porcelain piece, pulled out a small white porcelain plate, a silver needle, and some medicinal powder from his medicine box, and examined it publicly. When heated, the mercury vaporized and condensed into tiny silver beads on the plate. The silver needle turned black as soon as it was inserted. Your Majesty, Your Imperial Highness, the imperial physician's voice trembled. This object is indeed filled with mercury. Mercury is colorless and odorless. When heated, its toxin gradually invades the lungs and heart, causing fatigue, palpitations, and coughing symptoms exactly like those Your Majesty has been experiencing lately. The Queen Mother stumbled backward. She clutched her chest, her lips trembling. It took a long time for her to speak. No wonder I've been feeling chest tightness and shortness of breath for the past 6 months. When the imperial physician checked my pulse, he only said I was overthinking. She suddenly looked at the scattered porcelain pieces, fear flickering in her eyes. Investigate, thoroughly investigate for me. This Guanyin statue was presented by an official from Longxi. What was his intention? The Emperor's gaze was deep and profound as he scanned every face in the Buddha hall, finally settling on me. How did you know? I bowed low again. When I was a child, I lived with my mother in our ancestral home in Jiangnan. We had a gilded Buddha statue from the previous dynasty in our collection, which was filled with mercury. Over time, the mercury seeped out and poisoned an old servant who cleaned the statue every day. Today, when I entered the Buddha hall, I smelled an extremely faint fishy odor and saw droplets squirming on the glaze at the bottom of the Guanyin statue. I remembered the past incident and dared to test it out. That mercury Buddha statue had been given to my mother by my grandmother. She despised my mother for being the daughter of a merchant, covered in the stench of money, so she made her worship the Buddha every day. My father was an official in Longxi at the time. He had taken my grandmother's maid as a concubine and had another concubine daughter, Liu Rumei. He had long forgotten about my mother and me. In less than a year, my mother died in front of that mercury Buddha statue. My grandmother was ruthless, clearly the culprit. She still spread malicious rumors about my mother. Look at my daughter-in-law. Even the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas dislike her. Everyone else gets healthier by praying to the gods, but she somehow contracted a strange illness. She's clearly unlucky, with a mother's blood debt to avenge. How could I be as filial to that vicious old woman as my concubine sister? Grandmother, you're up to your old tricks again. # 4. The Queen Mother regained her composure. If it weren't for your courage to test it, my life would have been lost in vain. She paused, then spoke in a tired yet majestic voice. Liu Ruxing, the eldest legitimate daughter of the Earl of Pingning, has rendered meritorious service in saving the imperial family and distinguishing loyalty from treachery. By my order, she is conferred the title of Noble Lady Hui and shall enter the palace on a selected date. Emperor, she turned to the monarch beside her. What do you think? The emperor nodded. Mother's decision is final. Hui, benevolent and intelligent, suits her perfectly. Thank you for your grace, your majesty, and your imperial highness. I kowtowed to express my gratitude. My concubine sister Liu Rumei knelt in the corner, her fingers clutching her skirt tightly, her knuckles turning white. This boundless wealth and glory, she and my grandmother had handed it to me with their own hands. # 5. On the carriage back to the mansion, the road jolted and swayed. Liu Rumei finally looked up. Congratulations, sister, or should I say noble Lady Hui now? Her voice was soft. The words I spoke today were truly efficacious. Sister truly deserves the best man in the world. How should sister thank me? I leaned back against the brocade cushion embroidered with interlocking lotus patterns and smiled faintly. I just wonder, what kind of good marriage did you wish for yourself? Her gaze was complex, and she did not speak. Clearly, she had wanted to enter the palace. Raised under my grandmother's protection, her ambitions were high. The carriage entered the side gate of the Earl of Pingning's mansion. The imperial edict had arrived ahead of us, and the entire mansion knew I was to enter the palace as a noble lady. Lifting the carriage curtain, I saw my father Liu Chengzong waiting outside the second gate. His usually stern and rigid face now forced a faint smile. Xinger is back, I sneered inwardly. My father was an obedient son. Since my grandmother disliked my mother and me, he disliked us too, only fawning over my concubine sister Liu Rumei. In my previous life, he had never lifted a finger to help me, even when I was strangled to death. The mansion was decorated with lanterns and streamers everywhere, even the newly replaced gauze lanterns under the corridors exuding joy. As soon as I stepped into the main hall, my grandmother's agarwood crutch slammed heavily on the ground. She stared at me with a dark expression. Kneel down. Instead of being happy, she was furious. The hall fell silent instantly. The smile on my father's face froze. He hesitated, wanting to speak but holding back. He was a filial son who never contradicted his mother. Moreover, he was happy to see me humbled and made more obedient. My concubine sister Liu Rumei quietly moved behind my grandmother. I stood firm and raised my eyes to look at her. This wrinkled face made me sick. Grandmother, I said, my voice steady, I wonder what crime your granddaughter has committed. Crime? Grandmother sneered, slamming her crutch down again. What you did in the palace today, don't you know? You dared to touch the Queen Mother's Buddha statue, and even smashed it on your own accord. You're no different from your mother, who disrespected the gods and brought disaster upon herself. The Bodhisattvas are watching. Your recklessness and arrogance today will bring retribution tomorrow. She panted for breath. Furthermore, don't you know your own temperament? You're dull and taciturn, unfit for social occasions. What part of you is worthy of the imperial family's favor? Today, in front of the Queen Mother and the Emperor, you should have been more modest and yielded this opportunity to Rumei, who is sensible and knows her place. Letting her bring glory to the Liu family is the right thing to do. Sure enough, it was still the same old rhetoric, as if I was born to be a stepping stone, destined to have my flesh and blood boiled into juice to nourish the concubine-born darling of her heart, Liu Rumei. I smiled softly. Grandmother, you are mistaken. I turned around, walked to the yellow pearwood chair at the head of the hall, and sat down calmly. Mama Yang, who had accompanied me back, was personally bestowed by the Empress Dowager to teach me palace rules and etiquette. At this moment, she stood solemnly beside me, her face as calm as still water. Mama Yang, I turned my head, my voice neither too loud nor too soft. This concubine has something unclear and would like to consult you. According to palace etiquette, apart from the Empress Dowager, the Emperor, and the Empress, are imperial concubines required to kowtow to anyone else? Mama Yang stepped forward half a pace, curtsied, and replied, Your Highness Concubine Hui, rituals must not be neglected, and moral principles are of utmost importance. Sovereign-subject relations come first, followed by family ethics. Your Highness is now a consort of the Son of Heaven, holding the Golden Decree and Jade Seal. Under heaven, no one but the three august masters, the Empress Dowager, the Emperor, and the Empress, deserves your full kowtow. Even when paying homage to ancestors in the family shrine, only a half prostration is required. Should there be anyone ignorant of etiquette who dares to demand your kowtow, it is a crime of great disrespect. As her words fell, the hall was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Grandmother's old face turned red first, then blue, and her hand clutching the crutch trembled violently. You, she pointed at Mama Yang, then at me, too angry to utter a complete sentence. 6. Seeing this, Liu Rumei hurried to grandmother's side, bursting into tears that looked like pear blossoms sprinkled with rain. Grandmother, please calm down. Don't ruin your health for me. Sister's status is different now. We'll just let her have her way. We're all family, why make things so unpleasant? She cried so bitterly, as if she had suffered a great injustice. Yet every word implied that I was bullying others by virtue of my position and making grandmother ill with anger. Mama Yang, I took a sip of clear tea and said slowly, This concubine has another question. Today, the imperial edict arrived at the mansion. It is a joy for the entire household, a time when the imperial grace shines down upon us. If any female family member weeps without reason regardless of the occasion, offending the imperial favor, how should she be punished? Mama Yang was a sharp-witted woman. She said in a stern voice, For a minor offense, she shall be slapped as a warning. For a serious offense, she shall be flogged and confined to her quarters to serve as an example to others. With that, she took 2 steps forward, before Liu Rumei could react. 3 loud slaps landed hard on her face. Her crying stopped abruptly, leaving only gasps of disbelief. You, how dare you hit me? My, grandmother exclaimed in distress. Old madam, Mama Yang said with a solemn expression, Concubine Hui is soon to enter the palace, representing the dignity of the imperial family and the honor of the Liu clan. Everyone in the mansion must be cautious in their words and deeds, abiding by etiquette, to live up to the imperial favor. Should there be any more incidents of such disregard for hierarchy and decorum, do not blame this old servant for meting out severe punishment in accordance with palace regulations. Grandmother glared at me fiercely, but in the end, she did not dare to curse again. She stamped her crutch hard on the ground, pulled the trembling Liu Rumei up, and stumbled out of the main hall. Very well, what great prestige you have, Concubine Hui. Just you wait and see. Noble consort Lan in the palace is my distant niece. She is like an elder sister to you. Once you enter the palace, she will teach you a lesson. Grandmother shot me a venomous glare before leaving. The crowd dispersed. Only then did Father Liu Chengzong take out a flat red sandalwood box, open it personally, and hand it to me. Shinger, here is 10,000 taels of silver, take it. It will give you some financial ease to bribe the palace staff once you enter the palace. If it's not enough, just send someone to deliver a message home. In the days to come, the honor and future of the entire Liu family will rest on your shoulders alone. your father, and your grandmother are getting on in years. And your younger siblings are still young. You will have to look after this family in the future. In my previous life, I never received a single ounce of genuine affection from my father until the day I died. Now, this heavy stack of silver notes was nothing more than the price tag of my title as concubine Hui. This was my last night at home. I stood alone by the window, gazing at the malus micromalus in the courtyard. Spring was drawing to a close. The flowers were in full bloom. Yet they exuded a somewhat decadent splendor. 15 years' worth of memories, grandmother's resentful eyes, Rume's swollen cheeks, father's ingratiating smile, mother's tragic death throes, flashed before my eyes like a revolving lantern. The drama in this deep mansion came to a temporary halt today. That forbidden city, the true arena of blood and intrigue, was only just opening its curtains. The mastermind behind the Mercury Guanyin statue must be squirming in his seat by now, right? And my dear sister, grandmother's residence stayed lit all night. I wondered what schemes the two of them were hatching. Getting involved with that Mercury Guanyin statue was no good. Grandmother and Rume were far too ambitious. I gently closed the window, shutting out the overly noisy blooms of the tree. Mema. Besides palace rules and etiquette, please tell me about the likes and dislikes of the various imperial consorts in the palace, as well as the latest rumors inside and outside the harem, just the most important ones. If a fight was what they wanted, then a fight they should get. I was never one to back down from a challenge. 7. I was assigned to Jiangshuo in the West 6 palaces. Gifts from the Empress Dowager and the Empress arrived one after another, nothing but silk fabrics, jewelry, and ornaments. The Empress Dowager also bestowed a scroll of the Heart Sutra copied in her own hand, and sent a messenger to relay her words. It is most commendable that concubine Hui keeps a peaceful heart. The Empress, for her part, gave a pair of white jade rui scepters, symbolizing good fortune and auspiciousness. From the Emperor, there was only the customary reward of the 4 treasures of the study and several bolts of fashionable palace silk, no other words, no special favor. The green-headed plaque indicating my availability for the imperial bedchamber had been made and submitted on the day I entered the palace, but on the first night, word came from the Hall of Mental Cultivation that the Emperor had chosen noble consort Lan of Chenqian Palace. The second night, the third night. For half a month straight, it was either noble consort Lan, or the newly favored beauty Ru, or noble Lady Li. My plaque seemed to have never been seen at all, Mama Yang discreetly advised me. Noble consort Lan has enjoyed the Emperor's favor for many years, assists in managing the 6 palaces, and is at the height of her power. As a newcomer, Your Highness would do well to avoid her sharp edge for the time being. It is the safest course of action. I nodded in agreement. Every morning and evening, I went to pay my respects at Sinying Palace without fail. If the Empress Dowager was in good spirits, I would stay to chat with her, mostly listening to her talk about Buddhist scriptures or old palace stories. The Empress Dowager never mentioned state affairs or harem intrigues, and I never dared to speak of them either. In my spare time, I stayed in Jiangshuo practicing calligraphy, copying scriptures, or occasionally playing the guqin. My days passed in extreme tranquility. I rarely visited the imperial garden, and declined all invitations to tea parties from the other consorts whenever possible. Gradually, I earned a reputation for being cold and aloof. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye, and the air was thick with the approaching autumn. I still had not been summoned to the imperial bedchamber. The people in the palace were the most snobbish of all. Seeing that the new concubine had fallen out of favor, they did not dare to withhold my allocated rations. But the extra favors that required bribes gradually dried up. In Jiangshuo, apart from Mama Yang and Yun Qiu, the maid I had brought from home, who remained steady. The other palace servants inevitably grew slack in their duties. I was in no hurry. The stack of scriptures I copied every day grew thicker and thicker. I sent them to Sinning Palace regularly. The Empress Dowager showed no obvious favor on her face, but occasionally she would ask me to stay for refreshments, each time more elaborate than the last. The Mid-Autumn Palace banquet was held at Penglai Pavilion beside Tay Lake. I wore a lotus-pink brocade palace gown, adorned with a jade hairpin gifted by the Empress Dowager. The color was plain and unassuming, neither drawing attention nor falling short of etiquette. When the banquet began, the air was filled with the music of silk and bamboo instruments, and the clinking of wine cups. The Emperor and Empress sat on the throne of honor. The Empress Dowager did not attend, claiming fatigue. Noble Consort Lan sat in the first seat below the Emperor. Wearing a bright crimson palace gown embroidered with crabapple blossoms, her cloud-like hair was piled high, pinned with a large red-gold kingfisher feather phoenix hairpin, her beauty dazzling and overwhelming. She was indeed breathtakingly beautiful, the kind of imposing beauty nurtured by years of imperial favor. Only the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, no matter how thick her powder, could not be completely concealed. After 3 rounds of drinking, the atmosphere grew increasingly lively. Noble Consort Lan suddenly rose to her feet, curtsied gracefully to the Emperor, and said in a sweet, clear voice, "Your Majesty, although the palace dances are beautiful, they grow monotonous after prolonged viewing. Recently, this concubine acquired a maid in my palace whose dancing style is quite innovative. Might I let her perform a piece to entertain your Majesty and our sisters?" The Emperor, who seemed a little tipsy, nodded with a smile. "My beloved concubine is thoughtful. Granted." Noble Consort Lan clapped her hands twice. The music shifted abruptly from its original solemn elegance to a light, lively tune. A figure in a water-green dress twirled gracefully out from the side of the hall. Her posture was supple and delicate, her arms draped in sheer silk veils. She danced nimbly to the music, indeed more light and graceful than the average palace dancer. As the dance reached its climax, she spun around, and her veil slipped off, revealing a delicate, smiling face. It was none other than my concubine sister, Liu Rumei. Low gasps of surprise rippled through the banquet hall. My fingers holding the wine cup paused for a moment, then resumed their normal movement. I simply watched quietly. When she finished her dance, she knelt to thank the Emperor, slightly out of breath, her eyes darting timidly toward the imperial throne. The Emperor studied her for a moment, then asked, "Which palace are you from? You look somewhat familiar to me." Noble Consort Lan chimed in with a smile. "Your Majesty, this maid was recommended to me by my natal family. Her surname is Liu, given name Rumei. She has been serving in my palace for some time now, and is quick-witted and dexterous. This concubine grew quite fond of her, so I brought her here to meet your Majesty. Does she look familiar? Perhaps you saw her at the spring banquet." "Oh, from the Pingning Bo Mansion," the Emperor remembered, his gaze lingering on her face for a moment longer. "She dances very well. Noble Consort Lan has trained her well." Noble Consort Lan seized the opportunity. "Since your Majesty has praised her, why not grant her a favor? This maid has a pure and kind heart, and this concubine cannot bear to keep her as a mere palace maid forever." The Emperor seemed to be in an excellent mood today. He pondered for a moment, then said, "Very well, then, confer upon her the title of noble lady. Grant her residence in Listening Rain Pavilion, the back hall of Zhongshui Palace." Liu Rumei was overjoyed. She kowtowed repeatedly. "This servant thanks your Majesty for his great grace. Thanks noble consort for your promotion." At a single palace banquet, Liu Rumei rose from a mere maid to a noble lady, although it was the lowest rank among imperial consorts. This sudden leap from obscurity to favor was enough to draw envious glances from many old palace inhabitants who had toiled for years without recognition. By the time the banquet ended, the night was already deep. I leaned on Yunk's arm, walking slowly along the corridor back to my residence. The autumn night wind was cool, carrying a hint of moisture as it brushed against my face. Just as I passed a rockery, a figure emerged from a side path, blocking my way. It was Liu Rumei. Already dressed in the robes of a noble lady. "Sister," she said, her voice brimming with uncontrollable triumph, her smile sickeningly sweet. "What a coincidence." I stopped in my tracks, gazing at her quietly. She leaned closer, and a thick, sickly sweet fragrance wafted off her, laced with a faint, imperceptible cold tang of musk, heavy with the scent, far from subtle. "Sister, you've been in the palace for 3 months now. Are you settling in well?" She blinked, her tone oozing false concern. But her eyes dripped with sarcasm. "I heard you haven't even served the emperor yet. What a shame, with such a lovely face as yours. Grandmother has been unwell for a long time. Ever since you angered her that day, her cough has only gotten worse. She's always worried that with your stubborn temperament, you'll easily stir up trouble in the palace and bring disaster to the family. That's why she went through so much trouble to beg noble consort Lan to let me enter the palace, to share the family's burdens, and to look out for you. After all," she deliberately paused, then lowered her voice, brimming with pride, "I may not be much, but I foolishly won the emperor's favor last night. And the night before that, I served his majesty. The emperor even praised me for being so understanding. You don't have to lose heart, sister. Perhaps the emperor just hasn't discovered your charms yet, but his majesty's heart is unpredictable. You'd better hurry and win him over. After all, there are new beauties entering the palace every year." The night wind carried waves of that cloying musk toward me. She preened in her own conceit, utterly oblivious that she'd become nothing more than a pawn in noble consort Lan's game to cling to the emperor's favor, that she would never bear a child again. "Are you done?" Liu Rumei froze. "Are you done?" I repeated, my voice flat, giving no hint of my true feelings. "Mama Yang," I turned my head, no longer sparing her a glance. According to palace regulations, how should a noble lady greet a concubine? And between blood sisters, with the elder sister taking precedence, what is the proper etiquette for a younger sister's greeting? Mama Yang's voice was crisp and unyielding. "Your Highness, when a noble lady encounters a concubine, she shall perform a curtsy and address her as Your Highness. For blood relatives, the elder sister outranks the younger one. The younger sister must greet the elder first. It is the only way to uphold propriety." I nodded, my gaze settling back on Liu Rumei's suddenly stiff face. "Noble Lady Liu, did you hear that?" "You." Liu Rumei's face flushed crimson, then turned pale with rage. She clutched her handkerchief so tightly her knuckles whitened. "Why must you bully me with palace rules? Sister, we're blood relatives. Blood relatives have even greater reason to abide by the law and set an example for the harem." I cut her off, my voice turning sharp. "Today, when you saw me, you failed to perform the required courtesies. You flaunted the emperor's favor with your words and showed no respect to your elder sister. This is nothing short of insolence. Mama Yang, in your opinion, how should this be punished?" Mama Yang did not hesitate. "For a minor offense, a verbal reprimand and a slap. For a serious one, confinement to quarters for reflection. Then a slap it is." I brushed an imaginary speck of dust from my sleeve. "Given that this is her first offense, and that she is my younger sister, this shall be a light punishment to serve as a warning." "Mama, do it. How dare you?" Liu Rumei shrieked, stumbling backward in panic. "I'm noble consort Lan's woman. If you touch me, grandmother and the noble consort will never let you get away with it." But Mama Yang had already stepped forward, delivering 2 sharp, resounding slaps across her face. Liu Rumei fled, her cheeks swollen and red, screaming over her shoulder, "Liu Ruxing, just you wait. You're nothing but an unfavored concubine. We'll see how long you can act so arrogant." 8. Early the next morning, at the daily audience, The empress had always been frail and spent most of her time in convalescence, so the morning greetings were usually presided over by noble consort Lan. Liu Rumei sat at the bottom of the Rao, her head bowed low, her face was caked with thick powder. Yet the faint swell of her cheeks was still visible. She glanced up occasionally, her eyes brimming with grievance and expectation. Noble consort Lan lifted an eyelid, her gaze landing on me with a sardonic smile. Concubine Hui. I rose to my feet, curtsying. Your Highness, last night, after the palace banquet, I heard an amusing little story. A certain noble lady from my palace, apparently, she ran into you in the imperial garden and was disciplined by the mamar at your side. I lowered my eyes, my voice steady as ever. Your Highness, when noble Lady Liu saw me, she failed to observe the proper etiquette. Moreover, she flaunted the emperor's favor in her speech and showed disrespect to her elder sister. As a concubine, and as her elder sister, I deemed it fit to issue a minor reprimand to uphold palace regulations. Noble consort Lan let out a cold laugh. Noble Lady Liu was promoted by me. Even if she had done something wrong, you should have reported it to me first. And let me discipline her. For you to overstep your authority and punish her yourself. Does this mean you think I am incapable of controlling my own people, or that striking someone under my protection is of no consequence? No wonder your grandmother says you're unfilial and disagreeable, beneath us. Liu Rumei's lips curled into a nearly imperceptible smirk. I raised my eyes, my tone still calm and unhurried. Your Highness exaggerates. I would never dare to overstep my bounds. But palace rules are strict etiquette between sovereign and subject, and the hierarchy between elder and younger are the very foundation of our conduct. As a member of the imperial harem, if I had turned a blind eye to a fellow consort's breach of decorum, that would have been neglect of my duty. Furthermore, I paused, my gaze sweeping over Liu Rumei. Noble Lady Liu is my own sister. For me to discipline my younger sibling is not only reasonable, but also an act of care. I fear that in her youth and ignorance, her reckless words and deeds might one day offend a higher-ranking consort, or even commit a faux pas before His Majesty, that would only betray the kindness and promotion bestowed upon her by your Highness. Specious nonsense. Noble consort Lan's delicate eyebrows shot up in anger. By that logic, should I be thanking you? The Empress Dowager did not like noble consort Lan. She was arrogant and impulsive, always stirring up trouble in the palace. The emperor doted on her only because her family had rendered meritorious military service. The imperial court had already bestowed all possible titles and fiefs upon the Lan clan. The only way left to reward them was through favors in the harem. But the Lan family had grown arrogant with their military power, becoming a growing threat to the throne. Noble consort Lan was now at the height of her glory, bathed in the emperor's favor like flowers in brocade and fire in oil, but little did she know that her decline had already begun. Just then, a voice called from outside the hall, "Mama's son from Sinying Palace has arrived." Mama's son strode in with steady steps. "Your Highness concubine Hui, you attend to Her Majesty the Empress Dowager every day. Why are you a little late today? Her Majesty misses you dearly." I inclined my head slightly. I was just listening to the teachings of noble consort Lan. Noble consort Lan forced a gracious smile onto her face. "How timely of you to come, Mama's son. The concubine Hui and I were merely chatting, since the Empress Dowager is looking for you. Sister, hurry on over, don't keep Her Majesty waiting." Liu Rumei leaned forward, whispering anxiously, "Your Highness, are you just going to let her leave like this? She was so arrogant yesterday. She even hit me," my grandmother said. "Silence." Noble consort Lan snapped, her voice low and sharp. Liu Rumei tried to whine and wheedle, but noble consort Lan, humiliated in front of Mama's son, was seething with rage. She ordered coldly, "Concubine Hui is right. You really are foolish and ignorant. This is the palace. Stop mentioning your grandmother at every turn. Don't think you can use her to intimidate me. Tsuegwa, slap her until she learns to hold her tongue. 9. Upon arriving at Sinying Palace, the Empress Dowager had just finished her Buddhist devotions and was enjoying refreshments in the warm pavilion. She gestured to the palace maid beside her. Fetch that jar of warm fragrance wine sent as tribute from Jiangnan the other day. Bestow it upon concubine Hui, the Empress Dowager said. This wine is mild and won't harm the body. Tonight, take it to the Hall of Mental Cultivation and present it to the Emperor. Tell him it is a gift from me, and ask him to taste it. I have observed you for 3 months. Child, you are a good girl and the Emperor knows it too. I understood instantly. I had passed the royal family's test. I knelt down and performed a full kowtow. This concubine thanks Her Majesty for her grace. As night fell, the eastern warm pavilion of the Hall of Mental Cultivation was bathed in bright candlelight. This concubine greets your Majesty. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager has commanded me to bring your Majesty a jar of warm fragrance wine. The Emperor acknowledged me with a nod, and we fell into casual conversation. Are you settling in well in the palace? Your Majesty, all is well. The Empress Dowager is kind, the Empress is benevolent, and my sisters in the palace have been most supportive. I am very much at ease. I heard you go to the Empress Dowager's palace every day to copy Buddhist scriptures. You have a very tranquil temperament. This concubine is dull-witted. Only by calming my mind through copying scriptures can I slightly alleviate my anxiety, and live up to the grace bestowed upon me by the Empress Dowager and your Majesty. Anxiety. He set down his wine cup, a playful glint in his eyes. I didn't see any anxiety when you exposed the Mercury Guanyin statue. My heart skipped a beat. The Emperor studied me for a long moment, his gaze piercing, as if trying to see through the calm facade I wore. After a while, he looked away, his tone softening. You are a sensible woman. Sensibility is a virtue. What I need by my side are people who do not cause trouble. This concubine shall bear this in mind always. After 3 rounds of wine, his mood seemed to lighten. He suddenly asked, that Mercury Guanyin statue, you said it reminded you of an old family incident, your grandmother. The lady of Pingningbo Mansion, she is also a devout Buddhist. Here it comes, your Majesty. Grandmother is deeply devout. She has a Buddhist hall set up in our family mansion. But, I paused, as if choosing my words carefully. My birth mother passed away at an early age. It was because she worshipped a gilded Buddha statue from the previous dynasty, a gift from grandmother, which was filled with mercury inside. The statue's craftsmanship was extremely sophisticated. On the outside, it looked no different from an ordinary gilded Buddha. Over time, the mercury seeped out through tiny cracks and evaporated. It was only later, when I was sorting through my mother's belongings, that I accidentally learned the truth from an old servant. I continued, lowering my voice slightly. The method used to fill the statue with mercury was extremely secretive. Without prior knowledge, it would have been nearly impossible to detect. Before I entered the palace, there was a concubine in our mansion, surnamed Wn, given name Yuji. She was once grandmother's most trusted maid, and later became my father's concubine after being formally taken as his woman. She was exceptionally skilled at making silk cord knots, especially with fine gold and silver threads, weaving all kinds of exquisite objects, flower baskets, sachets, all lifelike. I lifted my eyes to meet the Emperor's gaze. The day I broke the Mercury Guanyin statue, I examined the fish basket held in Guanyin's hand closely. The weaving pattern was remarkably similar to a kind of water lily layered knot that concubine Wn often made. I found it familiar at the time, but I did not dare to speak of it rashly. The warm pavilion fell into a profound silence, broken only by the occasional crackle of the candle flames. I had said all that needed to be said. I had handed him the knife. Now it was up to this young emperor to make his move. 10. After serving the emperor that night, it was customary for concubines to return to their own palaces. The palace lanterns lining the corridor cast a dim, flickering light, stretching shadows long and thin, like lurking ghosts. In my previous life, after I was hanged to death, I wandered the palace as a bound spirit for a long time. During those years, I learned many of the palace's deepest secrets. For instance, the emperor was a deeply suspicious man. If he valued someone, he would first test their patience by leaving them to cool their heels. The Empress Dowager was a woman with a strong desire for control, and she attached great importance to etiquette and rules above all else. Noble consort Lan, for all her apparent favor, had actually miscarried 3 times, and every single miscarriage was the emperor's doing. The Empress Dowager's outward dislike for her was merely part of a well-rehearsed act, a 1-2 punch orchestrated by the emperor and herself. Lan never knew the truth. And then there was that Mercury Guanyin statue. It originated from Longxi, said to be a piece of natural white jade accidentally unearthed in a mine. At a glance, it actually bore a vague resemblance to the silhouette of Guanyin Bodhisattva. The local officials regarded it as a priceless treasure, a divine omen of good fortune, and reported it layer by layer all the way to the imperial court. Back then, my father Liu Chengzong, who served as the prefect of Longxi far away from the capital, was one of the officials in charge of handling this tribute. Before the auspicious relic was sent to the capital, it needed a little refinement to enhance its ethereal charm. This delicate task fell to concubine Wn, who had accompanied my father to his post. Her skillful hands were not only adept at weaving intricate silk knots, but also excelled in gold and jade inlay work and fine craftsmanship. The fish basket held in Guanyin's hand was crafted by her using extremely thin gold threads mixed with crushed jade fragments and a secret adhesive. Following her signature lotus petal layered emerald pattern, she wove and inlaid it bit by bit, seamless from a distance, and exquisitely ingenious up close. My father also lent a hand, greasing palms up and down the ranks in the hope of leaving a favorable impression on the emperor. The tribute was safely transported to the palace without incident and delivered directly to Sinying Palace. The Empress Dowager was a devout Buddhist. Upon seeing such a naturally formed Buddha-like omen, she was overjoyed and enshrined it with daily offerings. No one knew that during a certain stage of the transportation process, someone had quietly poured mercury into the interior of the jade statue. That someone was noble consort Lan. Her plan was to slowly damage the Empress Dowager's health without her knowledge, confining her to bed and rendering her powerless to obstruct her path to greater power. If the Empress Dowager were to die from it, that would be the perfect way to eliminate the threat forever. I didn't even need to think hard to figure out that my dear grandmother was undoubtedly involved in all of this. She had once used this mercury-laced Buddha trick to kill my mother without a trace, and having tasted the sweet success, she wielded this method with effortless skill. When noble consort Lan sought a reliable yet insidious way to deal with the Empress Dowager, who better to turn to than this seasoned, ruthless aunt of hers? Later on, the Empress Dowager's health deteriorated day by day, plagued by coughing fits and palpitations. Yet the imperial physicians could never diagnose an exact cause. Noble consort Lan was triumphant at first, but as time went by, seeing the emperor's increasingly grave expression and the doubled security measures in Sinying Palace, she began to grow afraid. Mercury poisoning was certainly covert, but there were no impenetrable walls under heaven. What if one day a highly skilled imperial physician detected something amiss? Or if the Guanyin statue itself developed some flaw? That would be a crime punishable by the extermination of her entire clan. She panicked. She had to make that deathly Guanyin statue disappear, and quickly, in a way that seemed perfectly reasonable, without arousing the slightest suspicion. So she turned to my grandmother once again. That old fox of a grandmother, I suspected, had long been harboring a scheme to turn the tables and kill multiple birds with one stone. Helping the noble consort resolve her urgent crisis would not only allow her to get rid of me, her annoying legitimate granddaughter, once and for all, clearing the path for her beloved Liu Rumei, but also earn her another merit in the noble consort's eyes. It was such a lucrative deal, how could she possibly refuse? The spring banquet was the perfect confluence of timing, location, and people. Liu Rumei would smash the Guanyin statue, then seamlessly pin the blame on me, her reckless, God-disrespecting legitimate elder sister. Noble consort Lan would step forward to speak up, urging the Empress Dowager to have me beaten to death with staffs. Everything would fall into place effortlessly. The Guanyin statue would be destroyed, eliminating the hidden danger. I would die, removing the thorn in their side. And Liu Rumei would even gain some rewards for her act of upholding justice against her own kin. They had calculated every detail to the last penny, probably even figuring that the minor damage to their reputation after my death could be brushed off with the excuse that like mother, like daughter, she never respected the gods and Buddhas anyway. But they had miscalculated on 2 counts. They never expected me to be reborn. And they never dreamed that I would turn the noose they handed me into a ladder to climb to greater heights. This debt, I would settle with each and every one of them. Upon returning to Jiangshuoxian, a palace maid reported to me, "Your Highness, just now Chief Eunuch Ronglu from Noble Consort Lan's palace and Noble Lady Liu came here. They said Her Highness's pet cat is missing and wanted to search our palace for it. Look what they've done, they've turned our palace upside down in a mess. They even took away the pomegranate jade carving and the jade bamboo root carving bestowed by the Empress Dowager." 11. Mama Yang's brows furrowed deeply. "Your Highness, this is an act of sheer arrogance on Noble Consort Lan and Noble Lady Liu's part, using the pretext of searching for a cat to ransack our palace. Why didn't you stop them, Mama? If they set their minds on coming, we could not have stopped them. It is better to let them search to their heart's content, so that they may rest easy." That pomegranate jade carving was a gift from the Empress Dowager, symbolizing many sons and much good fortune. I have always placed it in the most prominent spot on the curio cabinet. I traced the cold, carved patterns on the window lattice. Now that it's gone, it is clearly stolen by a thief taking advantage of the chaos. Go to the Imperial Household Department quietly to report the theft. No need to make a fuss, just file it as a routine case of lost property. "Yes, Your Highness," Mama Yang replied, a glimmer of understanding flashing in her eyes. A month slipped by quietly, beneath a veneer of calm, egged on by Liu Rumei. Noble Consort Lan grew increasingly hostile toward me. She often found excuses to confine me to my quarters, ordering me to stay alone in the small Buddhist hall of Zhongzhue Palace to reflect on my mistakes and write self-criticisms. Guarding the gate were none other than Chief Eunuch Ronglu and my concubine sister Liu Rumei, and she never missed a chance to hurl sneers and taunts at me. Beyond that, I still went to Sinying Palace every day to pay my respects and copy scriptures, but my complexion grew paler by the day, and I occasionally covered my mouth with a handkerchief to cough softly. When the Empress Dowager asked about my health with concern, I only said that the dry autumn chill had left me feeling under the weather. The Empress Dowager then sent Mama's son to bring me pear syrup to soothe my lungs. One day, while accompanying the Empress Dowager in conversation at Sinying Palace, I rose to refill her teacup. Suddenly, my vision went black. The Celadon teacup from Yukil in my hand crashed to the ground with a clatter, shattering into pieces. My body went limp and I collapsed backward. Concubine Hui, the Empress Dowager, stood up in alarm. "Your Highness," Yun Qiu and Mama's son rushed forward to support me. Sinying Palace descended into chaos in an instant. The Empress Dowager ordered sharply, "Hurry, send for the imperial physician. Send for the director of the Imperial Hospital at once." The director of the imperial hospital arrived in a hurry, after a thorough diagnosis of pulse, appearance, smell, and inquiry. His expression grew increasingly grave. Kneeling to report his findings, his voice trembled with disbelief. "Your Majesty the Empress Dowager, Her Highness Concubine Hui's condition. Her pulse is weak and erratic. She suffers from palpitations, shortness of breath, accompanied by dizziness and nausea. Furthermore, there is a faint abnormal discoloration at the base of her fingernails. This is actually somewhat similar to the symptoms of poisoning Your Majesty suffered earlier." "What?" The Empress Dowager slammed her palm down on the table, standing up abruptly, her face dark with rage. "Mercury poisoning again. How long has it been since we cleaned up the palace? How dare someone stretch their hand right in front of my eyes? Investigate, thoroughly investigate every inch of this palace for me. I want to see who is bold enough to commit such a heinous act." The news spread like wildfire throughout the 6 palaces. The Imperial Household Department and the Department of Punishments dispatched all their men, launching an unprecedentedly rigorous search from the residences of the highest-ranking consorts to the quarters of the lowliest palace maids and eunuchs. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, a silk handkerchief-wrapped object was found hidden in the small Buddhist hall of Zhongshui Palace, noble consort Lan's residence. It was none other than the long-missing pomegranate jade carving. But by now, an extremely fine hole had been drilled at the bottom of the once smooth and translucent jade pomegranate, and its interior was filled to the brim with mercury. Under the sunlight, it glowed with an eerie, menacing sheen. When the evidence was presented to Sinying Palace, I was leaning weakly on the bed, being fed medicinal soup by Yun-Q. Upon seeing the jade carving, my eyes flew open wide, and tears welled up instantly. This was a gift bestowed upon me by Your Majesty the Empress Dowager. How could it have become like this? I sobbed uncontrollably. I remember clearly, this jade carving was always placed on the curio cabinet. A month ago, Eunuch Ronglu from noble consort Lan's palace came here with noble Lady Liu, saying they were searching for Her Highness's lost pet cat. After they searched our palace thoroughly, I discovered some items were missing, and this jade carving was among them. I went to Zhongshui Palace to inquire about it. But noble Lady Liu claimed she had never seen it before, so it was hidden all along under the prayer cushion in the small Buddhist hall of Zhongshui Palace. I never imagined in my wildest dreams that they would dare to tamper with a gift personally bestowed by the Empress Dowager. This is not just an attempt to harm me, it is clearly an act of unspeakable cruelty, exploiting the Empress Dowager's boundless kindness and affection. If I had truly died from this poisoning, how heartbroken and enraged would Her Majesty be? As the Empress Dowager listened, her face turned ashen with fury, the veins on the back of her hand, which clutched her prayer beads, standing out prominently. This was no longer a simple case of harem infighting. This was a direct challenge to her authority, a desecration of her sacred gift, and above all, it was an attempt to tarnish her reputation and put her in a position of disgrace. Very, very well. The Empress Dowager ground out the words through gritted teeth. "Where is the Emperor? Go fetch the Emperor immediately." The Emperor arrived quickly. After hearing the entire sequence of events, he looked at me, his gaze complex. "You have suffered greatly, Concubine Hui." I lowered my head, shaking it through my tears. "My life is of little consequence. What truly pains me to the core is the thought that someone would dare to scheme against a gift from the Empress Dowager, defiling her benevolent grace like this. My heart feels as if it is being pierced by 1,000 knives. Mother, please calm your anger. I already have some leads in this matter." He waved everyone else away, leaving only the Empress Dowager and me, before speaking slowly. "Earlier, Concubine Hui mentioned to me that her grandmother, the lady of Pingningbo Mansion, used a similar method to kill her birth mother years ago. Furthermore, The craftsmanship of the fish basket on the Guanyin statue presented by the Longxi officials bears a striking resemblance to the silk knots made by a certain concubine Wan in the Pingningbo mansion. I have already ordered a secret thorough investigation into this matter. What did you find out? The Empress Dowager asked anxiously. The Guanyin statue was indeed handled by Liu Chengzong, the prefect of Longxi. The inlay work on the fish basket was done by his concubine, Wan. As for the stage of transportation when the mercury was poured in, it is inextricably linked to the power and influence of noble consort Lan's maternal family in Longxi. The Dowager Lady of Pingningbo Mansion has close ties with noble consort Lan. In this recent incident of the stolen jade carving being returned to concubine Hui's palace, noble Lady Liu was an active participant, and it was noble consort Lan who introduced noble Lady Liu into the palace in the first place. The emperor's voice was steady and calm, yet every word struck like a bolt of lightning. The evidence is not yet fully conclusive, but the implications are clear. The Lan clan is arrogant and domineering, their malicious intentions deserve death. However, as for the current situation in the imperial court, the Empress Dowager understood instantly. Noble consort Lan's maternal family wielded great power, and the borderlands were still unsettled. This was not the time to tear off the mask and turn against them completely. The emperor's gaze fell on my pale face, carrying a hint of imperceptible scrutiny. What do you think, concubine Hui? How should we handle this matter so that it may both quell mother's anger, serve as a warning to the entire harem, and yet not alert the snake prematurely? I sneered inwardly. Sure enough, he was going to make an example of the Pingningbo mansion. Find a scapegoat who is neither too important nor too insignificant, someone who can give the Empress Dowager an explanation while temporarily stabilizing noble consort Lan, making the Lan clan believe they still hold all the cards. In truth, this was exactly what I wanted. I knelt down, my voice choking with sobs. This concubine dares not meddle in state affairs, but, plotting to harm an imperial consort and desecrating a royal gift are heinous crimes punishable by death. As a daughter of the Liu family, I am ashamed that such traitors and villains have emerged from my clan. I have no face to beg your majesty for leniency. I leave everything to your majesty and the Empress Dowager to judge impartially. I only ask that the harem may be restored to peace, and that the Empress Dowager will no longer be troubled and aggrieved by such scoundrels. I beg your majesty and the Empress Dowager to severely punish the Pingningbo mansion. This time, it was I who turned against my own family for the sake of justice. The emperor looked at me deeply. Concubine Hui truly understands righteousness. He turned to the Empress Dowager. Mother, Liu Chengzong, the Pingningbo, has failed to govern his family properly. He indulged his female relatives in committing such vicious deeds and even meddled with tribute goods to curry favor and advance his career. His mother and concubine have desecrated your majesty. Their crimes are fully proven. I believe we should immediately arrest all relevant personnel of the Pingningbo mansion, throw them into prison for strict interrogation, and uphold the imperial law and palace regulations. The Empress Dowager closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. What you say is correct. Let it be done. I closed my eyes, and 2 lines of clear tears streamed down my face. Mother, can you see this from heaven? Your daughter has avenged you. 12. The imperial edict was issued, in an instant. The Pingningbo mansion was seized and confiscated. Liu Chengzong, grandmother, concubine Wan, and all other relevant members of the mansion were thrown into the imperial prison. Charges attempting to harm the Empress Dowager, desecrating a royal gift, and plotting treason. When the news reached the palace, I was drinking the medicinal decoction newly prescribed by imperial physician Wu. The bitter taste burned my throat, but my heart was cold and clear. Grandmother, father, concubine Wan. When you sent my mother to her death with that Mercury Buddha statue, did you ever imagine this day would come, when you conspired with noble consort Lan to send me to hell with that fish basket Guanyin statue? Did you ever think this day would arrive? This is only the beginning. Savor the taste of the imperial prison, enjoy it well. As for noble consort Lan, I stirred the dregs at the bottom of the bowl gently. I'll let you linger in comfort for a few more days. For when the glory of your maternal family reaches its peak, that will be the moment when the emperor settles all scores with you. 13. The imperial edict arrived at Zhongsue Palace in the afternoon. At that moment, Liu Rumei was trying on a new pair of red gold earrings inlaid with cat's eye stones in front of the mirror, a gift from noble consort Lan a few days earlier, said to calm her nerves after the recent scare. The reflection in the mirror was delicate and beautiful. Noble Lady Liu received the imperial edict. The eunuch's voice was shrill and piercing. Liu Rumei's hand trembled, and the earrings clattered onto the dressing table. She hurried to her feet, straightened her robes, and knelt down, her heart pounding uncontrollably for no reason. Noble Lady Liu, with an evil and deceitful heart, colluded with criminal relatives, coveted power in the harem, and even participated in plotting to harm an imperial consort and desecrating a royal gift. She is utterly lacking in virtue and unworthy of serving His Majesty. By imperial decree, her title is stripped. She is demoted to a commoner, imprisoned in the cold palace of the North 5 Courts, and granted a length of white silk. No. Liu Rumei raised her head, all color draining from her face in an instant. She seemed not to have heard, or perhaps she had heard but could not believe it. What did you say? No, that's impossible, noble consort. The noble consort promised me. I want to see the noble consort. I'm innocent. It's that bitch Liu Ruxing who framed me. She scrambled to her feet, trying to rush outside, but two eunuchs grabbed her arms tightly, one on each side. Let me go, you lowly slaves. I am a noble lady. I belong to noble consort Lan. How dare you touch me? The noble consort will never forgive you. She struggled frantically, her pearls and jade ornaments scattering, her carefully styled hair disheveled. She looked like a madwoman. The eunuch delivering the edict remained expressionless, waving his hand. Gag her and take her away. She was dragged roughly out of Listening Rain Pavilion, along the long palace corridor, toward the North 5 Courts. Along the way, she twisted and kicked, her eyes bloodshot as she stared at every palace maid and eunuch passing by, as if searching for a savior. This remote corridor leading to the cold palace happened to pass by Jiang Shuxian, having received word in advance. I wrapped myself in a plain brocade cloak and stood under the corridor, quietly watching the struggling figure approaching from afar. Liu Rumei saw me. She struggled even harder, as if she wanted to tear me to pieces with her eyes alone.
Concubine WN, someone has come to see you, the jailer shouted loudly, his tone laced with contempt. The figures inside stirred. Grandmother was the first to rush to the bars. She was filthy. Her grey hair matted like straw, her face covered in black and blue bruises, but her eyes were terrifyingly bright as she stared at me fixedly. Xing'er, you're here. Save grandmother. Grandmother knows she was wrong, she was foolish and muddle-headed. Hurry and beg the emperor and the empress dowager for mercy. Grandmother is willing to become a nun, to spend her days with green lanterns and ancient Buddhas to atone for her sins. Just save grandmother out of here. Father Liu Chengzong also stumbled forward. He was slightly more presentable than grandmother, at least his clothes were still intact, but his face was ashen, his eye sockets sunken, all his former official dignity gone, replaced only by fear and begging. Xing'er, my dear daughter, father knows you hold a grudge against me, but I am your biological father after all. Blood is thicker than water, you cannot stand by and watch me die. In the darkest corner of the cell, a figure huddled. Only slight trembling proving she was still alive. It was concubine WN. There was barely any intact fabric left on her body, and her exposed skin was covered in all kinds of horrific wounds. some even festering. The jailer snorted coldly from the side. Your Highness, you wouldn't believe it, this old hag handed over her own concubine for a bite to eat. We brothers pitied her. As for Master Liu, he joined in too, without the slightest hesitation. My stomach churned violently. Seeing I remained unmoved, grandmother grew more frantic. Xing'e, back in Longxi, noble consort land, didn't just meddle with the tribute routes, she also embezzled military funds in secret and forged weapons privately. The evidence is in, just save me, and I'll tell you everything. With this, you can bring her down, the palace will be yours from now on. Grandmother, I cut her off softly. I read your letter, then I passed it along to the noble consort. Grandmother blinked once. Then again, slowly, her pupils constricted to pinpricks. They widened, then cracked wide open, blazing with unspeakable despair and venom. You ungrateful wretch, Liu Ruxing. I should have strangled you the moment you were born, just like I did with your useless mother. That's enough. Liu Chengzong suddenly roared. He raised his hand and struck grandmother hard across the face. Grandmother's head snapped sideways, and several teeth flew out of her mouth. She clutched her cheek. Staring at her ever-filial son in disbelief, Liu Chengzong panted heavily, pointing a trembling finger at grandmother. You old hag, still unrepentant to the very end. If it weren't for your insatiable greed, colluding with noble consort Lan and hatching these vicious schemes, how could our Liu family have fallen into such ruin? Xing'e is the hope of our clan. It was you who treated her mother and her so cruelly that you turned her heart to stone. This is all your fault. After he finished shouting, he turned to me in a panic. Xing'e, my good daughter, look, father's taught this old witch a lesson for you. I've always loved you. Deep down, it's just that before I was blinded by her lies, I know I was wrong. Save me, and from now on I'll listen to you in everything. The Liu family will depend on you. Grandmother collapsed to the ground, screaming, Liu Chengzong, you coward, beating your own mother just to save your skin. Karma, this is all karma. Liu Ruxing, did you see that? This is your precious father. You think he's truly repented, he just wants to live. He's rotten to the core, just like the rest of us. Liu Chengzong's face flushed crimson with rage, then turned deathly pale. He lunged at grandmother, pinning her beneath him, and began to punch her repeatedly, roaring all the while. Shut up, shut your mouth, Xing'e, father's killing this scourge to avenge you. I'd do anything to make you happy. After a long while, grandmother's curses faded into incoherent gurgles. Eventually, they fell silent entirely, but Liu Chengzong kept swinging his fists mechanically, gasping for breath. I spoke slowly, my voice calm and emotionless. Father, that's enough. Liu Chengzong froze abruptly, his face spattered with blood, his eyes brimming with desperate hope. Xing'e, have you calmed down now? This old witch is dead. Does that ease your hatred? Father, when can I get out of here? I looked at him, and suddenly smiled, a cold, hollow smile, as clear and icy as winter water. Father, I never once said I would save you. In my heart, the day mother died was the day I stopped having a father. All the blood drained from Liu Chengzong's face in an instant. His mouth hung open, gasping like a fish out of water, his lips moving soundlessly. I turned away, no longer sparing him a glance, and straightened up, nodding faintly at the jailer. Thank you for your trouble. Then I turned and walked away. Behind me, the sound of Liu Chengzong's hysterical wails echoed, mingled with the faint, finally unburdened sobs of concubine Wn that escaped her throat. I did not look back. Step by step, I walked out of this stinking, filthy hell. At the end of the long corridor, a sliver of pale grey daylight glimmered faintly. Outside, unbeknownst to me, the first light snow of winter had begun to fall. I took a deep breath of the cold, clean air, sealing away all the sin, bloodshed, and wailing behind me forever. Yunqiu held up an umbrella for me. The snow fell silently, covering all filth and impurity in its soft embrace. Later, the Lan clan's moment of glory, like a flower blooming in brocade. Like a fire fed by boiling oil, finally burned itself out. The day news of a great victory at the border reached the capital was also the day irrefutable evidence of noble consort Lan's elder brother and father embezzling military funds and colluding with foreign enemies was presented to the emperor. When the wall collapses, everyone pushes it, with all their crimes exposed to the light of day. The emperor no longer had any reason to hold back. Noble consort Lan was stripped of her title, reduced to a commoner, and ordered to take her own life in the cold palace. Her clan, like a tree falling and scattering its monkeys, collapsed and vanished in the blink of an eye. When the dust settled, I was promoted to noble consort Hui, perhaps because my long-held grudges had finally been laid to rest, or perhaps thanks to the Empress Dowager's careful protection and care, my health gradually improved. I gave birth to 2 sons and a daughter for the emperor in quick succession. The children frolicked around me, filling my days with joy. The empress, having long been suppressed and poisoned by noble consort Lan, had never been able to conceive, and her health grew increasingly frail. I adopted my eldest son into the empress's care, and he was named Crown Prince. The empress treated the Crown Prince as her own flesh and blood, devoting all her heart and energy to his upbringing. Gradually, the pallor faded from her face, and smiles began to grace her lips once more. Many years later, the emperor passed away, and the crown prince ascended the throne smoothly, benevolent and diligent in governance. He was praised by both the court and the common people. The empress and I were honored as the 2 empresses dowager, moving into Sinying Palace and Shokang Palace respectively. It was another late spring day, and the crabapple trees in the courtyard of Sinying Palace were in full bloom, their blossoms cloud-like and rosy. I held the hand of the empress, now to be addressed as Empress Dowager, and together we watched our grandchildren playing beneath the flower trees. At long last, everything is peaceful at last, the Empress Dowager whispered, patting my hand gently, her gaze drifting far away. I smiled softly, but did not reply. I simply handed her a cup of warm tea. A light breeze blew through the corridor, causing the crabapple petals to flutter down in a gentle shower. A few drifted inside, landing silently on the hems of our skirts. The past, like these falling petals, had returned to the dust. What remained was this rare peace in the depths of the palace, a quiet, unspoken understanding between 2 women who had walked through the storms of blood and betrayal hand in hand. The snow covers all enmity. The flowers bloom in times of peace. This was more than enough. That's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. I'll see you in the next video.